Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. Today we're continuing our tournament tutorial series for Elvenar, and it's time to play Magic Dust Tournament. So, in my initial run, when I tried to do basically the same boosts, so apples to apples comparison across all the different tournament types, for that kind of city, what I'm playing here, it actually turned out to be the most difficult tournament by far. I lost probably almost twice as many units doing the same things as I would do in other tournament types on average. So, well, I'm not going to be repeating the same mistake. Well, basically that means that for this tournament I need to have a lot more boosts. So, let's quickly run through what do we have here. Again, you can take a look at the first episode in the series, which would be a marble tournament, and there's also a link in the description where you can see my post on the website where I outline the general setup, losses, ramp up, things like that. So take a look there. But briefly, what we're trying to do here is run from 24 provinces up to 5 stars. And for this video, I'm done with the first 4 stages of the tournament, first 4 stars. And we're only going to be doing 24 provinces for 5 stars, the toughest ones. And the city what I'm playing here is the Elf City, end of chapter 17 and game right now. And I have Martial Monastery level 30, which is a maxed out one. So that's 30% extra health for all unit types. On my side, I also have all other Ancient Wonders that give damage boost to different unit types. And they're about, well, mostly, almost all of them are now close to level 16, so that's extra 24% damage boost for all unit types. For the temporary ones, I have evolution level 10 Fire Phoenix Fed, which means it's extra 50% damage boost for all unit types. And now for temporary buildings, well, I did put out a lot for this tournament. I did put out 1 Dwarven Armor and 1 Unleashed unit upgrade, so for grand total another 75% extra health boost for all unit types. I also put twice as many as usual, I guess, 2 Magnificent Mage multipliers for extra, what would be 100% damage boost for mages, and also 2 Enlightened Light Range buildings, so for also another 100% extra damage boost for my light range units. That is a ton. But as I said, if there are any, if there's any tournament where you want to do more boost than usual over the 9-week cycle, well, I would recommend Magic Dust if you want to be kind of like average losses across the whole cycle. Or you can just do fewer provinces in this one, if that's what you want to do. So without further ado, so let's jump in and see how it goes. So the first 4 rounds proven that, well, that worked much better this time, with like so much more in terms of temporary boost. So let's see how it goes. A lot of the matchups here are not quite amazing. Okay, so let's see. Alright. And obviously, because we have so much more boost for mages and light range, we'll try to go there as much as we can, as long as it makes sense. So, but in all fairness, I think in this tournament we actually have more variety in used unit types on our end than in any other tournament what I've played so far, and actually across all the 9 tournament , 9 tournament types. So Okay, so mage is certainly an option. Light range is also an option, but not a great one because, well, later on, you see this, we will see a lot of Stainlings here in this tournament. And these are heavy ranged units, and unfortunately for us, they're light range specialists. So what happens, even if you have a single Stainling in the lineup for your enemies at 3 stars, and you're fielding your light range units, you're gonna sustain quite a bit of losses. They're really good against your light range, even with all the boosts that we have. But in this case, going mages is a fairly good option, fairly straightforward. 3 heavies that will do really well against, 1 mage, that's fine, and 1 counter unit which happens to be light melee, non-mage specialist, yeah, that's gonna be fine. Okay. So let's see. Number 2. Okay, another one, easy one. So you do have a couple of options here, but realistically that's the mage lineup. Remember, we have a lot of boosts for mages, and in this particular case, Banshee would be our weapon of choice because they're excellent against heavy range. As you can see, plus 90% and minus 80% damage taken. That's in addition to all the boosts that we have for mages, and we have 4 heavy ranged here and another one which is also heavy. Yeah, that's gonna be good. Okay. Okay, so here we have a couple of options here. So yeah, mages, well, technically is an option, but not an amazing one. You can go light range here, but that would be a lot of light range versus light range. And we have, yeah, this one is not a light range specialist, but still. That much earlier on, heavy ranged actually is going to do quite well here. And the only counter unit here is not a mage, it's actually heavy melee, so we can certainly go heavy range here, and in this particular case we'll go Orc Strategist because they're excellent against the light range. Be careful with heavy range though, because later on, at some point in time, or rather in the provinces, probably about 20 and above, in this particular case the heavy range starts to take heavy losses. And in some cases can actually lose outright, well, at least without all this extra health boosts. But we're certainly not quite there yet. Okay, again, another one, easy one. So we have 4 mages, so that's our... Oh, by the way, check it out now, they're not called Forest Wardens, they renamed them to Pro Rangers, so 3-star mercenary camp unit. So Pro Rangers are excellent against mages. I think I did show this before. Plus 90, minus 90, so it's 10 times damage reduction right there. And the only counter unit that we have to check is a light melee, not light range specialist. So yeah, that's an easy one. Alright, so far so good. And again, like in the early provinces, just about anything would work. It's all about how it turns out to be later. Okay. Okay, so this one is slightly more interesting. So as you can see, on one hand, you can certainly go light range and Pro Rangers again. Would do really well against mages, obviously. It will do pretty fine against light range. But now, the only counter unit here we have, even though it's light melee, it's actually Ancient Orc, who happens to be light range specialist. And the thing is, again, later on, it's plus 60, minus 20. When you have the overwhelming, well, not necessarily overwhelming, but basically enemy has advantage in numbers, even a single Ancient Orc in the lineup can actually ruin your day. I mean, not to the extent that you're going to lose it, but your light range can sustain quite significant losses, actually, if they manage to close in and do some damage. So in some of the cases, again, later on, you may consider going just mages, even though here it's like a mage over mage. Will be okay. Then you have the ancient orcs who are not mage specialists, so actually they don't do very well there. And you have light range, who is not mistwalker, who is not mage specialist either. So mages can work in these situations, sometimes better, not necessarily in this one. You might be tempted to go Cerberus here. Now, in some cases that's actually might be an option. It's rarely a good option. The problem with this going Cerberus, even though the on paper matchup looks pretty good here, right? Like there are no country units here, and they're pretty good against mages, but that matchup would be heavily dependent on the terrain, which, well, in our auto combat experience we don't see. So they can do really well if the matchup if the terrain is favorable. But if it's not, you can sustain very heavy losses and you can lose outright. So that's kind of bottom line with the melee. Again, earlier on doesn't really matter that much, but if you at all can consider going some ranged, or at least mage units, instead of light melee, you should probably do so because they're a lot less dependent on the terrain. So in this case, we only have one ancient orc here. Everything else is pretty good for light range, and we're earlier on in the provinces, so that's not an issue. So there's, as you can see, that did really well. I mean, not surprisingly, but be careful with this kind of matchups again later on, deeper in the tournament. Okay, so what do we have here? Yeah, another one of this kind of neither here nor there. So heavy range isn't sort of an option, but there is one mage there, which in all fairness not a heavy range specialist. Have heavy melee, who actually happens to be a heavy range specialist, and another heavy range, so not amazing. Heavy melee is an option. In some of these matchups, it might be even the best option. Very infrequently, but the same caveat for light melee, what I just mentioned in the previous province applies here. So it can work really well for you, or it can actually go terribly wrong, depending on the terrain. So let's see if we can possibly pick something else. Yeah, in this case I will actually, again, earlier on I will go with mages. Mages do, obviously, Blossom Princess would do really well against heavies, will do well against mages, and two sort of country units here, light melees, non-mage specialists, so actually it will do quite alright there. And as you can see, well, it did quite better than alright, but again, not something you can count on later on. Okay. Right, so this one is actually a matchup where you probably want to go heavy ranged, and again, because it's not that far into the provinces, that's actually a pretty decent option. Only one other heavy ranged, and only one mage who is not even the heavy range specialist, so golems would do well here. You can actually go, well, let's just go frogs just for kicks of that. Frogs do better earlier on. The thing with frogs is basically there's a sort of a glass cannon type of setup. They have very good range, very good damage over distance, and again, earlier on, that's maybe all you need, because they can kill everything else approaching even before the opponent can hit them. The problem is later on, You can't count on destroying all your enemies before they close ranks and can inflict some damage, and that's where the problem for Frog Princess come in, and that's the movement rage. That's 1. So basically once the opponent corners them, there's no way they can escape, and they're pretty squishy, so they have the lowest hit points out of all heavy range unit. So anything that gets close to them will actually inflict pretty heavy losses and can kill them completely. So earlier on, fine. Yeah, even then it's kind of starting to take some damage, but later on you're usually better off using golems rather than frogs because they have a lot more hit points. Okay. Well, that's the easy one. Obviously, we're going pro rangers here. No counter units here. Quite a few mages. Yeah, that worked really well. Okay. Okay, another one, relatively easy one. So no actual counter units here for our mages, and here we're obviously picking banshees. So 2 mages versus 2 mages, that's going to be fine, and 3 heavy ranges. Heavy ranged opponents would have terrible time against our banshees, as you can see. Alright, province number 10. Okay, again, another one which is on the surface, you can kind of go both Cerberus and Rangers, and it seems like the Rangers are slightly worse here because technically both Cerberus and Rangers do well against mages, but Rangers do not do that well against ancient orcs. But remember, it's the range versus melee, so here Rangers will definitely dispatch mages very easily, and a single ancient orc being a melee unit is not a big issue. Going Cerberus, as I said, you're gambling on a favorable terrain. If it's not the case, yeah, that wouldn't be pretty. So in this case, there's no reason to do so because we know that light range would do quite alright. Fortunately, not all my chaps are like that. Okay. Again, here on one hand, you don't have any counter units to light melee, but again, I prefer not to go melee if I can avoid it at all. And in this case, I can, so I can go actually heavy range again, because there's only one mage, which is not heavy range specialist, and everything else is good for my heavy range unit again, because we actually have quite a few light melee units against us. I'll actually try to go frogs. As you can see, plus 90, minus 70, they do really well against melee. And let's see. Okay, we are still doing quite alright. If you are playing frogs, you just need to see if one of these matchups what you thought should be going well for the frogs, and all of a sudden you experience relatively heavy losses. That's basically means you reach the tipping point after what, well, you probably shouldn't be using frogs at all. Okay, again, another one which should be good for frogs, because 4 light melee and 1 not even counter unit. Yeah, so we did take some damage from mostly from range, probably. Okay, but that was a good and easy matchup. Okay, so that's where it gets kind of sketchy a little bit. Yeah, I don't want to go light melee. You definitely don't want to go light range here. Nothing really good there. Going mages is an option, but yeah, not necessarily amazing. Yeah, we probably have to go banshees. Banshees are not great mage unit against, well, stuff that they're not really specialized in. You can, in theory, go heavy ranged, and that in this case probably means golems. Not really amazing options. We have one mage here. Well, it's not heavy range specialist, so that much is good, but then we have two other heavy ranged units. Yeah, I know that again. In this case, with the boost that I have, I'll probably err on the side of going boosted units. So benches, okay, so we did quite alright here. So other options would be, again, try to go heavy melee. So again, gambling on the terrain, they could be doing really well, or they could get stuck somewhere and getting just destroyed. Okay. Okay, so let's try frogs again, and just to see, you see, like in this case, light melee shouldn't be an issue, should be easy to deal with, and we only have one mage who is not heavy range specialist, but let's see. Okay, so we are still doing quite alright here. But remember, I'm pretty sure like at that kind of province number and in 5 stars, if you would have significantly less, well, health boost and what else do? Well, primarily health boost. The outcome for this encounter might have been quite different. Okay, so yeah, here we'll kind of have to go heavy range again. Definitely not going, yeah, probably golems. So we have one mage here, which is a generalist, so it's still not too bad. And a mix of other units. So frogs wouldn't be amazing here, I don't think so. And golems have much higher, if I remember correctly, 484 versus 363, so about 1/3 higher hit points. Yeah, as you can see, not amazing, but again, not too bad. Okay. Okay, here comes another one which is really, yeah, you have to kind of a bit gamble here. So you can go with heavy melee here. Heavy melee in theory does really well, and by that I mean Valorian Veteran, again another renamed unit, used to be Valorian Champion, Veteran Guard, now it's Valorian Veteran. So they do well against heavy range, they do well, sort of against light melee. They're pretty hardy, and they have 2 as an attack range, which is quite well. Yeah, you see, like they have a lot of health. And the only one counter is a generalist light range, which is not amazing. We can try to go just golems here. There are no country units here, so yeah, I know that. Let's go golems. Even though golems would not do well against other heavy ranged like that, but it's still range. Yeah, as you can see, actually we did quite a bit better than I anticipated. So again, terrain probably worked to our advantage here. Okay. Okay, finally some easier matchups here. Okay, that's a no-brainer here. We go in light range. The only counter unit here is melee, non-light range specialist, so yep, that went well. Okay, let's see. Alright, okay, major generalists, what we have here. We also have heavy melee who is specializing against heavy range, so going golems here is kind of dangerous. So we have one mage, which is always dangerous for heavy range units, even though this is not dedicated heavy range specialist. And we also have heavy melee. It's a melee, but it's knight, and it actually does inflict quite a bit of damage against heavy range if it can get close, and it will be able to get close because again we are check out the squad sizes. It's, well, ours 20,000, enemies 32,000, so they have quite a bit of advantage, so they will be able to get close. What other options do we have? Going light range. It's not bad against hellhounds, not terrible against thieves. Stainlings, however, would be a problem. Stainlings are really good against light range, and yeah, not really amazing setup. What if we go mages? So for mages we have two heavies that we can do well against, one mage, which would be okay. Then we have light melee, which is not mage specialist, which is probably fine, and we have hellhounds, which are unfortunately mage specialist. Despite being melee, they're pretty good. So I'd say our options here either go Blossom Princesses and yeah, taking some pounding from hellhounds, but that's only one unit that they're sort of good against. Or try to gamble on the Valorians. And no, and in this case I'll probably gamble on mages first, again because we have a lot more boosts. So let's see. Okay, yeah, as you can see, we did sustain quite a bit of damage, so not quite 40%, but close to like 35 maybe. We could have done somewhat better with the heavy melee, but we could have as well lost quite a bit more. Again, that's the problem with the melee setups. They're pretty volatile, and again, playing auto combat, you just don't know ahead of time. Alright, so here we have two mages in the lineup. And these are heavy range specialists. So, okay, here's right there. Heavy range is not an option here. Heavy range at that stage doesn't do really that well against single mage. Against two mages they would do really badly. And the enchantresses, who are heavy range specialists, yeah, you can actually lose that matchup here. Similarly, heavy melee not really a good option, because two mage units, even though they're not specializing here, but two mages are just a bit too much. So we can try to do some mages, or we can try to do light range. Again, that's a matchup where you can gamble in theory on Cerberus. So you have two mages that would do well, have sort of two light melees that they will do okay against. But then you see we have a heavy range unit there in a lineup who is actually light melee specialist. So yeah, that's not a good time to even gamble on light melee. So that leaves us with our staple here. So we can try to do rangers, and who do we have as a counters? Heavy range, not light range specialist, light melee, who is light range specialist, another light melee who is generalist. Not amazing. Or we can try to go with mages, and the counters look actually better. We have one light melee who is not mage specialist, and one light melee who is a generalist. I am tempted to go mage here, and probably Blossom Princess actually. Let's see. Yeah, that actually worked quite well. Again, if you have a matchup when the mage type is not obvious because there's a mixture of units, usually go Blossom Princess. They're great, with a few exceptions where benches would be better, and that wasn't one of them. So that actually went better than I anticipated. Okay, so that's another good one. And here we go mages again, but in this case that's actually an example of where you want to go not Blossom Princess, because Blossom Princesses do fine against heavy range, but they're not amazing for that. Let's just check. Yeah, plus 30%. So minus 70 is still great, so that allows them to buff that damage. But bench is just much better from that perspective. And yeah, you can see that late in the match, in the tournament, 5-star, and what's the province number? Province number 20, and we sustained almost no losses with pure benches on auto combat. That's pretty good. Alright. And here we go again for some somewhat sketchy matchup. Okay, so Generalist Mage. So that's where you may want to go heavy melee. Let's see if we can go anybody else. We can go mages. That's an option. There's a Hellhound though. Yeah, light range is not great option. Light melee not great option. Okay, you know what? Let's try to do Valorina just to see how it goes. So you can see how it may look like. Okay, you see, that wasn't the worst case scenario for sure, so we lost about 20, maybe a little bit more percent. That's pretty good. That was a good outcome here. We could have actually lost more if I have went mages, but would probably still be quite comparable. Okay, heavy range is an option. Yeah, that's probably the only decent option here. Anything else here does not look appealing, and golems should do actually quite alright here. Yeah, that went actually, again, somewhat better than I anticipated, because usually, again, with that numbers advantage, golems versus either heavy range, and we had 2 of those. Not amazing, but that went fine. Okay, so heavy range? No, probably not. Okay, mages. Yeah, this is a really awkward one. Yeah, not mages. We have a Mistwalker here, which is ranged and mage specialist, and we also have Hellhounds, who also happen to be mage specialist. So no, we're not doing mages. So actually, we have to go. Okay, so that's another example where you, in theory, may try to go to gamble on the Cerberus, because the only counter unit, technically speaking, here is the heavy melee, who is not light melee specialist. So it may work, or it may not. But here I'd first try to go ranged, and hopefully we will win. The problem here is, again, ancient orcs. So even though light melee, they're really good against light range. Hellhound is not nearly as big of an issue here, even though, again, they can get close fast and still inflict some damage, especially with strike back. We should still be able to win it. Yeah, you can see that's the example of basically a lot of that you can attribute to the ancient orc. Look at this damage. What is that? Probably like half, probably close to 50%, or something like that. not amazing. We could have done better with light melee again. No guarantees for sure. And that was like province number 23. So that would hurt. But still, not nearly as much as it used to be. Okay, so this one is an easy one. Even though there is a Stainlink here who is really good against light range, there's only one. And the rest is mages, which our pro rangers should be able to take care of very easily. So let's go. Yeah, so single Stainlink and nothing else. And he has no friends. That's kind of game over. And that's, let me just double check, and that's it. So I must say that went so much better than my previous attempt at Magic Death Tournament, where I had, I don't remember exactly what I had, but I think I had a single, well, comparing to the current one, I had a single Unleashed unit upgrade instead of an additional Dwarven Armor on top of that, and I had only single MMM and a single ELR. And with that I had I literally experienced some losses as early as in some 3-star provinces. So this time around I had no defeats, sorry, not losses. I certainly had some losses. And you can check out on my post, as I said, link is in the description, on the totals for the losses here. But I can tell you right away. So now we actually, with so many boosts, we are getting close to the sort of average losses what I experienced in the previous tournaments. So I managed to bring back losses for the toughest tournament in the cycle to about the same level as everything else. So that's good. And with that, if you liked it, click that like button, subscribe for more content like that. Mention in a comment what you liked, what you didn't like, what you want to see more, less, or anything constructive. And with that, I hope to see you in the next, and that would be a final episode for this tournament tutorial series, because that would be a final tournament type, which would be gems. That would conclude our 9-week cycle of new tournaments. So I hope I'll see you then. See ya.